Sydney dreams of becoming a Kappa sister like her late mother. She also meets the perfect guy, Tyler. But to prove herself, she needs to keep fighting the entitled Kappa president, Rachel. At a construction site, all workers take turns to sign a card for Sydney. Her father, Paul, finds her working and gifts it to her. She's touched by the sweet gesture, but there's another surprise. He wants her to have a laptop she can use for college. She asks Stu to be careful with the nail gun, and gives a hug to Big Ron. Sydney has been raised by construction workers, so she knows more about whistling than spending time with girls. She was 9 when her mom, Deborah, passed away. Paul has used innovative methods to explain menstruation to her. Sydney knows he did his best, but there are times when she needs her mom. As Paul sees her off before college, he feels Deborah would have known what to say. He's excited about Sydney joining her sorority, and is sure she will fit in easily. Sydney opens a box of her mom's stuff. She reads a letter Deborah left for her first day of college. Deborah knew she won't survive, but kept that box of her favorite memories. She asks Sydney in the letter to live every moment and find friends for a lifetime. She hopes Sydney fills the box with her own memories to pass it to her daughter. Deborah was in Kappa Phi Nu, and Sydney wants to fit in there to feel closer to her. Rachel Witchburn is the Kappa president at Southern Atlantic. She checks the rankings of a hot or not site, and is proud she has maintained the top spot. Sydney arrives at campus and finds her roommate. Dinky is also a Kappa legacy like her, whose mother was in Kappa. She's excited about sharing a room, and hopes they will move into the Kappa house soon. Her mom gave her a Kappa doll when she was 5. She knows exactly what to wear for their first rush party. But Sydney doesn't have any dress, so Dinky lends her one. Sydney is touched because she has never had girlfriends. As the president of the student council too, Rachel arrives at the meeting. She still likes her ex-boyfriend, Tyler Prince, who is the president of Beta Omega Rho fraternity. She has a problem with him flirting with the girl, and asks for everyone's attention. Tyler wants to discuss a special project, but Rachel doesn't let him talk. Their plan is related to the Vortex, where all the outcasts live. She takes out a beautiful model and crushes the Vortex one. They plan to make the Witchburn Prince Greek Life Center in the area, for which Tyler and her parents have donated funds. It's a priority that year, and Rachel plans to somehow deal with the current tenants. Rachel wonders when Tyler will stop playing games and come back to her. She dumped him in middle school because she thought she could do better. He suggests she should find someone else because he's not interested. Sydney has fit into Dinky's dress, but she still doesn't have the right shoes. She hopes the sisters still like her for who she is. Tyler's friend is checking out girls and finds some geeks from the Vortex. There's a puppet show and lightsaber fights, after which he finds his target. He throws a ball at George, but Sydney catches it and saves him. George gets nervous when she talks to him and rushes inside. She throws the ball back at the mean guy and comments on how he needs practice. Tyler is impressed and introduces himself. They're running late for the rush party, but Dinky thinks they should take Tyler's help. He appoints himself as their Greek guide and informs them about the houses. The Gamma Phi girls are always screaming because they are cheerleaders. The Pi Beta Omega girls are known for partying more than anyone on campus. Sydney asks about the Vortex, and Tyler explains it's not a fraternity. It started out as an overflow student housing, and now it's just there. He brings them to the Kappa house, and Dinky goes ahead so they can spend time alone. Rachel watches them from the window. Tyler thinks Sydney is very different from the Kappas because they're very intense. She explains it was her mother's house, which is why she wants in. Tyler already knows the Kappas could use a girl like her. It's also his sister sorority, and Sydney jokes about them being siblings. She starts rambling and admits she does it when she's nervous. The rush party is putting her on edge since she doesn't know what to expect. Before the doors open to welcome their new pledges, Rachel asks the girls to avoid taking fat people. When she wants a girl to see the koi pond, it means they're supposed to ditch her. She also knows about the two legacies, Sydney and Dinky. She asks the girls to alert her once they are spotted. The Kappas begin their chant, but Rachel assigns Amy to kitchen duty. She has gained some weight over the summer, and Rachel wants Kappas to be perfect. As the doors open, all the girls enter. Sydney tries to socialize, but is more interested in the swing from her mom's photos. Katie and Christy find her, and take her to Rachel when they realize who she is. Rachel wants to ditch her, but Katie insists she's a legacy. Rachel is sure Sydney is not Kappa material. She also didn't like Sydney apparently throwing herself at Tyler. They still need to give her a bid, but Rachel doesn't think she will survive the pledge. Sydney hears people talking about the hottest guy on campus and learns they're referring to Tyler. They remind her he's off limits. He and Rachel are broken up, but he's part of Rachel's 20-year plan. She wants a life with Tyler as the top litigator and herself as the senator. Sydney makes fun of this plan, but no one agrees with her. She wants to fit into this crowd, so she lies about her dad being a developer. When the Kappa pledges are chosen, Rachel and her sorority sisters bring them into a room. They sing them to sleep, but wake them up with air horns. They plan to give them tasks throughout the week to see who all can survive being a Kappa. Their first task is a date dash, where they have to find a date in the next few minutes. All the girls rush outside and start bringing random guys. There's no one around for Sydney, but she hears someone sneezing in the bushes. Lenny asks for help with his medicines. He explains he hid for cover when he saw some girls running at him. Sydney asks if he can be her date, and he agrees to come with her. Right before the deadline, Sydney rushes in with Lenny. Rachel judges her for how she eats pie, while all the girls are scared of eating. Lenny explains the vortex is a haven for people who don't have anywhere else to go. Some of the people there didn't get along with their roommates. Others had to leave when they made people uncomfortable. All of them are outsiders, and Sydney can relate to that. But Lenny reminds her she's a Kappa pledge, which is the definition of an insider. Rachel asks all Kappa pledges to join her for the date dash ditch. Since Sydney has the most unsuitable date, she needs to ditch him. Sydney tries to argue about how nice her guy is. But Rachel needs her to do this if being a Kappa is important to her. Sydney reluctantly goes back to Lenny. She asks him to meet her in the girls' bathroom, and claims it's part of another pledge ritual. He gets excited and hides in the bathroom till a woman turns up and beats him. He runs outside to find everyone has disappeared, and he is stuck with picking their check. Professor Carlton discusses how their founding fathers were afraid of a direct democracy and its impact on the country. He wants to know why, and Bell claims they didn't want America to become like Rome. Carlton agrees that everyone is trained to think more power is better. He asks for comments, but doesn't want Terrence to reply, who has been in the class for 8 years. Rachel feels most Americans aren't educated about important issues. She thinks it's important to keep things more elite, and finds even oligarchy's ideal. Carlton asks for Sydney's opinion, who hesitates before answering. But she thinks Rachel's argument underestimates the masses. Apartheid was an oligarchy, and she knows no one wants that again. Carlton is impressed with Sydney's answer, but Rachel gives her a dirty look. As the Kappa pledges work out, Rachel starts asking them trivia questions about the sorority. Sydney is the only one who openly enjoys a good breakfast. Rachel starts looking at faults in people's faces and suggests what they need to improve. She asks Dinky a question about the Kappa founder. Sydney helps her with the answer, but Rachel notices this. The Kappa pledges are also made to clean the bathrooms at the Beta fraternity house. Rachel asks Sydney about Kappa's colors, which she claims are green and white. The correct answer is emerald and pearl, and Sydney apologizes for forgetting to speak Pris. This offends Rachel and she sprays her. When it's Sydney's turn to get inspected by the mirror, Rachel can't find any faults. When the girls are done with the bathrooms at Beta House, Tyler spots Sydney. He feels bad they have to do all this, but Sydney claims she spends a lot of time in bathrooms. She's clearly nervous and rambling again, so Rachel asks her to go back to the house. Rachel thinks Tyler will question Rachel for taking someone like Sydney, but Tyler finds her cool and cute. Sydney returns some books to the library and asks for the one she has on reserve. She apologizes to Lenny for what happened the other day. She feels bad, but Lenny thinks that was normal behavior for a Kappa. When he gets up to leave, Sydney shouts out a Kappa ritual to make him feel better. She claims they had to sing Celine Dion songs as the sisters threw baloney at them. The girls are about to be introduced as official Kappa sisters during their presence dance the next day. It's a tradition for the sisters to pass down their gowns to the new pledges. Rachel draws the first name for the lucky girl who will get her gown. She's not happy when it turns out to be Sydney, but she's still polite and brings Sydney to her closet. She asks Christy to check her hot or not rank and claims it's a dumb list she doesn't care about. Rachel still has the top spot and thinks people like to stick with the status quo. She knows new people never make it to the list, but Sydney is there on number 213. She picks out a dress for Sydney, but makes sure to flirt with Tyler on the phone. The pledges get ready for the dance and are introduced by Rachel. Tyler thinks Sydney looks amazing and asks her for a dance. He wonders who she is because she can throw football like a professional and clean bathrooms. When she makes a football reference, Tyler instantly asks her to marry him. This makes Sydney nervous and she starts rambling again. Rachel pins all the new pledges and congratulates them for being Kappa sisters. But when it's Sydney's turn, Rachel claims it's her duty to act as judge and jury. She thinks Sydney has exhibited inappropriate Kappa behavior. She lists out how Sydney got an unsuitable date to the date dash. She also cheated during pledge quiz when she helped Dinky and revealed a secret pledge ritual to the whole library. Rachel also announces that Sydney lied about her background and wants everyone to know her dad is a plumber. She dismisses her and wants her to know she will never be a Kappa. Sydney doesn't want this kind of cruel sisterhood either. She decides to leave and rips her dress when Rachel asks for it. She packs her stuff and gets out of the Kappa house. Lenny is playing cards with the boys in the vortex, while Gherkin updates his blog. And Belle walks to the door and informs them about a girl outside. Spanky recognizes her as Sydney. She apologizes for sitting outside their house and admits they were right about Kappa. Lenny feels bad for her and invites her to stay with them. He introduces her to Gherkin, Terrence, George, Jeremy, and his puppet Scoozer. Jeremy was a shy kid who was recommended a puppet by a therapist, and he never stopped using it. There's an explosion, and Belle puts out the fire in his sleep. He's from Nigeria and seems to be taking 3 years to adjust to the schedule. Terrence realizes what kind of shock therapy he needs and takes his pet away. Lenny brings his special nightlight for Sydney so she doesn't feel scared. He notices her comic book collection and thinks she's more Vortex than Kappa. He offers a lot of allergy medicines because he's allergic to everything. Spanky comes over in a bathrobe to ask if she needs anything. Lenny apologizes for his behavior and explains that all the boys don't know how to behave around girls. Sydney calls Paul that night, who wants to hear all about her Kappa dance. She claims it was great and everything went well. Paul is sure her mom is there with her in spirit. Cindy almost trips on the staircase and asks why they don't get the place repaired. Since Rachel runs the student council, she's responsible for the budget allocation. Most of the funding has been devoted to the Greek system, so there's no money left for the Vortex. Sydney doesn't want Rachel to run their lives, but George thinks she's very scary. Rachel hears Tyler's voice and gets excited, but he's calling out to Sydney. She doesn't want to remember how Rachel humiliated her. But Tyler wants another chance to prove that everyone in Greek Row is not like Rachel. Cindy is distracted by the applications for the student council. She claims she's busy juggling 7 guys. Rachel, Katie, and Christy are trying to enjoy the sun when a man throws water at them. Rachel knows they won't have to deal with the public once her Greek center is built. She checks the hot or not list again to see how many Kappa girls have made it. She notices Cindy now has the 21st spot and freaks out. Cindy wants all of them to sign up for the student council so they can get Vortex repaired. No non-Greek has been chosen for years, but Sydney thinks it's time for a change. She decides to be their campaign manager. She doesn't want them to be powerless and motivates them. She uses an Avengers reference to explain how they can't give up. They get fired up, and she asks who wants to run for president. Only Terrence doesn't refuse, so they decide he'll be their candidate. They all start preparations, and Sydney is impressed with the posters. She also adjusts Bell's alarm to correct his sleep patterns. She even teaches George how to tie his shoelaces. She even brings them to the gym and asks them to socialize. Lenny refuses to pick up even the lightest weights. But Bell is doing well because of his changed sleep cycle. They all watch an ad about Rachel leading the student council to great heights. Rachel gets an update about the list and starts screaming when she realizes Cindy is now second. Sydney is trying to get people to their stall. When nothing works, she announces free drinks. Everyone gathers, and she Terrence to socialize while she works on the burgers. Dinky feels bad for what happened, and Cindy understands it's not her fault. Lenny comes looking for his gluten-free soy patty, and Dinky asks if they have extra. She's allergic to gluten too, and they bond over it. Rachel reminds Dinky that the Kappas are someplace else. She taunts Sydney about finding people she fits in with. Sydney retaliates by calling her superficial. Rachel wants her to know non-Greeks never win student council, but Sydney seems confident about her chances. Dinky needs to leave with them, but Sydney points out to Lenny that she was flirting with him. Before a game, Terrence quotes some calculations that predict a double-digit loss for the Sharks. The supporters get confused, but remember graduating with Terrence. Sydney is trying to gather support when someone asks them to throw the frisbee back. George throws it right at Rachel's head, and Tyler finds this hilarious. Sydney finds her mother's name engraved on the desk she's studying at. Some boys start leaving roses on her desk and humming a song. She thinks they have the wrong desk, but Tyler comes with another rose and starts singing for her. He claims he will keep singing till she agrees to go on a date with him. She refuses initially, but agrees when he starts singing again. She wants it to be a normal dinner and doesn't agree to a date. Sydney chooses a formal outfit, but all the boys know it's a bad idea. They realize she also doesn't have any experience in dating. They decide to help her get something more suitable. The boys try to scare Tyler before the date, but he only has eyes for Sydney. She puts out a fire in front of him and claims it's not as bad as the plumbing. She's impressed when he brings her to a soup kitchen. Carlton claims Tyler had no choice when he and the betas got in some trouble. But when Tyler starts serving, Carlton informs her that Tyler fulfilled his requirement last year. He still keeps coming there to serve all the time. Tyler brings her to an abandoned building. Sydney shares that she was hoping being a Kappa would make her feel closer to her mom. But Tyler doesn't think she them. She knows she feels closer to her mom just by being there. She also shares about the engraving she noticed. She teases him about bringing his dates there, but they both know how fancy sorority girls are. Sydney is the first girl he has brought to this place, because he knew she will appreciate it. He drops her to the vortex, where all the boys spy on them. Sydney tries to not ramble, but Tyler knows he's making her nervous. They lean in to kiss, but Spanky falls from the balcony. Sydney knows they were spying on her, and refuses to tell them about her date. Rachel wants to know why Tyler is spending time with Sydney. He asks her to deal with the fact that he likes her. Rachel claims she's more worried about the Greek Life Center, and Sydney messing with her plans for building it. Even Tyler knows they don't have a shot at winning the election, and asks her to leave them alone. He thinks the place is a death trap and suggests they can find another one for the center. Rachel can't believe he's ready to blow a good deal for one date, but Tyler knows it was a great date. The news is now about how their party might have a chance against Rachel. Some guys think they might vote this time because someone else is standing for president. Rachel angrily rips the poster and rushes home. Christy and Katie try to distract her, but Rachel checks the site to find that her first spot has been taken over by Sydney. Rachel now plans to make sure Sydney and her 7 dorks to get eliminated from social circles. Sydney asks the guys to give a chance to Tyler and not be so mean to him. Tyler asks if she's ready, but Sydney wants them to hang out there. Tyler recognizes the game Gherkin is playing, which he made himself. It's a combination of a few games Tyler is familiar with, and he asks to play Gherkin of Honor with him. Tyler beats Gherkin, and he's impressed because no one else has managed that. Tyler wants them to know even beta boys play video games. He invites them for a game sometime, and even asks them to come to his party the next day. When they all turn up, Tyler asks the boys to enjoy the bar. He takes Sydney to the dance floor as Rachel watches with jealousy. When someone finishes their time on the keg, people think it's impossible to beat the record. But Terrence thinks he can do it, and suspends himself. He beats all records and becomes a favorite. Dinky finds Lenny and compliments his new hairstyle. He seems nervous, but some Kappa girls interrupt them. They claim Rachel is calling her urgently. They start flirting with the boys and want to party with them. They inform them about a hot tub, and ask them to leave their clothes in the hallway. The boys are trying to find the hot tub when Rachel and her friends open the curtains. They get embarrassed, and Cindy thinks this was low even for Rachel. But Rachel is excited because their president, Terrence, has been disqualified. He's not a student, because he graduated 6 years ago. Terrence claims he had to stay back to learn more. Tyler tries to throw Rachel out, but she thanks him for playing his part. Tyler hasn't told Sydney about the Witchburn Prince Greek Life Center yet. Rachel takes advantage of that, and brags about having the vortex condemned on Tyler's suggestion. Tyler admits he called the place a dump, and initially wanted to tear it down. He wants to explain more, but Sydney refuses to hear anything. She apologizes to the boys, but they think they were better off without her. She wants to stand up to the Greeks, but they have lost their place to live. Sydney leaves a message for Paul claiming that she misses him, and everything is great. The boys load their stuff and leave for a motel. Paul turns up there too, because he could tell by Sydney's voice that she needed him. She admits she didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to fail her mom. Paul thinks it's more important to be the same kind of person her mother was, instead of reliving her life. He reminds her that Deborah was someone who always fought for what she believed in. Paul knows Sydney is like her, and is proud. Sydney wants the guys to get up and fight again. She asks them to be fired up so they can use the passion to help their party win. She has decided to be their presidential candidate against Rachel. Sydney's message starts playing for everyone in school, and she urges them to not let the Greeks dominate. She knows 80% of the student body at their school is not Greek. Carlton teaches them about the Kennedy campaign in 1960. He was an outsider, and he won by reaching out to other outsiders. Sydney also wants to appeal to those sections of the school whose voices deserve to be heard. They start mingling with the different groups, and they find a lot of support. Rachel gets worried and starts distributing her flyers. When the boys are installing their posters on the grounds, a girl approaches Gherkin because of his People's Punisher t-shirt. When she learns he wrote the blog, she wants to hook up with him. Tyler wants to help Sydney, and clarifies he had nothing to do with what Rachel pulled. He admits he was involved with the Greek Center, but wants Sydney to understand Rachel twisted everything. Sydney knows Rachel is capable of doing that, and warms up to Tyler. Rachel finds a hacker when Sydney is still working on Carlton's paper. She wants to add some ideas from their campaign, and Lenny teases her about being a dork. But when she clicks on a link, her computer gets hacked and she loses all the data. The boys try to fix it, but they know the hacker has done a great job. Sydney is in shock because Carlton's paper and her debate are due in a few hours. She knows she has to pull an all-nighter, and submits the paper to Carlton after the sun rises. She falls asleep there, but the debate is about to begin. When Tyler hears the boys discussing they can't find Sydney, he checks the library. He finds her at her usual spot and urges her to wake up. Tyler kisses her, and Cindy is finally wide awake. When Carlton is about to give up, Sydney joins them right in time for the debate. Rachel doesn't want to fix what isn't broken, and refuses to make changes after the great year they had. She's also proud of getting the Greek Center soon. When it's Sydney's turn, Rachel teases her about not having any followers. But people from all groups start entering to support Sydney. Encouraged by this response, Sydney begins her speech. She thinks they've been oppressed by the Greeks for too long. She knows they don't leave anything for the rest of the students. She has met so many people during the campaign, and feels bad they have to stay in the shadows. She admits she initially wanted to fit in, but admits she's an outsider and a dork. Tyler admits he loves video games, and claims he's a dork too. Spanky also admits he's desperate to sleep with girls. Jeremy introduces himself in his own voice for the first time, and throws his puppet away. Rachel's own Kappa girls think she's a bully. Rachel walks out, but the Kappas surround her. They strip her of Kappa sisterhood for being manipulative. They take away her pin, and Rachel screams. Sydney has won the election, and they all start working on repairing the vortex. Dinky tends to Lenny when he's sick, and is very much in love with him. Some girls claim they're lost and ask Spanky for directions. Terrence enters in an expensive car, and explains that he finally perfected his predictive analytic probability theory. Since it can even predict outcomes of sporting events, he sold it for $10 million. They're all excited that Terrence is rich, and Dinky asks them to pose for a picture. Like Sydney's mom suggested, she made friends for life and has some memories to keep in the box.